Welcome to the second tutorial, and today we shall be looking at Python syntax. And under this, we shall cover the different syntax execution and the indentation. What kind of indentation we deal with when we are actually doing Python. So let's dive into the code and really see what syntax execution is and what indentation is. Python syntax can actually be executed by writing the code within the shell, within the command line. For example, if we have maybe a value of x, which is actually 5, which has a value of 5, and a value of y, which has a value of 8, and I actually want to find the sum of these two. This gives me, of course, definitely 8 plus 5 gives us 13. We are able to write our code within our command line. That is all about the way we execute Python. Another way you can execute it is by creating a file. We're going to move to the File tab and create a new file. Let's call, first of all, before you start writing code, it's good to save. Let us save it. You can just, if you're using Windows, use Control S. If you're using Mac OS, you can just use Command S, or you can just hover to this tab and save it as. So you're going to save it as actually first, let's call it, no, we had written one, let's write second code. Could even call it first file. Do not have permission to save in this location, or suppose this is on C. So let me take it to as I created a folder for my Python programming, so I'll just save it to the desktop in the Python folder. Save it there. So the same way we actually had x being assigned to 5, x taking up a value of 5, and y taking up a value of I think it was 8. We can still find the sum of x and y. But since we are not writing in the command here, you have to use a keyword called print. So we shall print out, normal printing. We are printing out the value of x plus y. So if you run this, it brings you the solution within the command line. It's 13, it still brought you 13. So this is how we actually do the execution of Python. You can either just use the command line, you can create a file, or you can actually establish an environment. If you have an environment like PyCharm, I will later on take you through the installation of PyCharm. You can still use that environment to actually write your code. But for this course, the major thing we need is actually this shell. We don't need to go into that kind of installation. Okay, so if you're writing within a shell and you want to exit the shell, you just use a function called exit, write the word exit, and put 2 brackets at the end. Take note of the case. This is lowercase. If you write uppercase, then it's going to be different. Okay, if you write, for example, let's write something like exit. This is not actually a keyword. When I run enter, it's going to bring me an error. I should write it in small letters. And when I do this and I click enter, I actually quit the shell. Your program is still running. Do you want to kill it? Okay. Clicking that, I exit the shell. That's how you would actually exit your shell whenever I want to exit it. And if you want to close up the file, you come to this tab. So let's look at indentation. What is indentation? Don't worry about what I'm writing. That is called a comment, and we shall look at it in the next story. So don't worry about this. Indentation basically refers to the spaces at the beginning of the code line. Where in other programming languages, the indentation in code is for readability only. In Python, it is very important. It's not only just about readability. This even helps us to implement. If you don't take indentation into practice, you're going to have you're going to have errors within your code. For example, let's look at a simple if statement. Maybe if 5 is equal to maybe 3. Of course, this is not true. We are going to say, you see that kind, when you click enter, it automatically gives you a tab space of 4 spaces. So that is only, it means that this, whatever we are going to print out, is going to be actually in the if block. Okay, let's print out that we're going to write a statement and say that 5 is equal to 3. Okay, so if I run this kind of code, it's going to run without giving me an error. Okay, it's running without giving me an error because I've really done my indentation very well. But if you actually put this print statement at the same starting point as the if statement, we are going to get an error in this because we didn't leave any space behind that code. They're telling us that the expected unindented block after the if statement in line 2. So the best thing to do is to really put some space. You can choose to put any space, even if it is one space, this is all right, but you have to leave some space. Though most of the programmers actually prefer to use, you see, there's no error that has come. Most of the programmers prefer to use four spaces, okay? Have something like tab space, those are 4 spaces. So that is what indentation in Python is actually all about. The number of spaces are up to the person who is coding. But as I said, most of the developers use 4. Personally, I also usually use 4. So using 4 is actually very fine. But another thing, let's say you have to write another print statement. You said you can leave any number of spaces. Let's also print that 5 is 5, okay? And then we run this code. This actually runs. We need to first save it. So whenever you're going to run it, just type Ctrl+S to save before you run it. That saves automatically, then you can run it. So you see it is actually running without any error. So, but what if this print statement was maybe given an indentation of 2 spaces and that is given 4? This is disastrous, okay? When you run it, you'll get an error definitely. Because if they are the same lines of code in the same block of code, we are supposed to leave a similar amount of indentation. If you leave 2 spaces, leave 2 spaces for every line. If you leave 4 spaces, leave 4 spaces for every line that you're writing within your block. Okay, you really see this is actually able to run. I actually talked about Python variables, but variables are basically like containers within which you actually store your code. If I have maybe x assigned to 5, this means that x is my container and I'm storing a value of 5 to x, and I'm storing the value of 5 to that specific container x that I've actually created. If you're creating a variable name, a variable of maybe letters, maybe y, and then you assign it to a string, okay? Whereby you can either choose to use single quotes or double quotes, but let's use double quotes for now. Hello world, okay? This actually runs, but this hello world is being stored within y. So y becomes the variable name and hello world becomes the variable. Why do we call it a variable? If I come and assign now x to 7, okay? Initially x was 5, then now x is 7. The value will have changed from 5 to 7. It is varying. Let's now print out the value of x to actually confirm that. If we print out the value of x, the value of x was initially 5. Then in that same location, we now put in 7. We move the other one and put 7. That's what that one basically means. So when I run this, I'm supposed to get a value of 7. Okay, see that in the shell. So whenever you have a value, then you later on assign that value to another variable, the value changes, okay? If you have initially x was assigned to 5, now I have x assigned to 7, it means that it will always take up the value that is the latest value before implementing a certain printout statement. Okay, this was all about Python syntax. Let's move to Python comments in our next video. Meet you there. Thank you.